I want you to imagine, just for a second, that you've sat down at a table to play this highly complex, incredibly high-stakes board game.
Right.
And you look around, and all the other players are already moving their pieces, they're rolling the dice, making these rapid-fire trades. But there is a huge catch.
Nobody ever handed you the rule book.
Exactly. No one gave you the rules. In fact, the rule book is written in a language that sounds a lot like English, but the words mean entirely different things.
Yeah, it's incredibly disorienting.
Right. So you make a move, you lose half your pieces, you ask why, and someone just tosses a phrase at you like, capital gains or adjustable rate mortgage.
Which just sounds like jargon to most people.
It is jargon. It is disorienting. It's frustrating. And frankly, it feels like a setup for failure.
Well, it's the ultimate systemic disadvantage. I mean, you are trying to win, or at the very least, just survive a game where the mechanics are actively obscured by the terminology itself.
Exactly. And if you are listening to this right now, whether you're commuting to work or walking the dog, that is exactly what navigating the modern American financial system feels like for so many of us.
Oh, absolutely.
So today, we are tackling this head-on. We are doing a deep dive into a masterclass that decodes this exact system. We have this incredibly detailed source material that maps out the essential vocabulary of American personal finance.
And the mission here is crucial. We are going to take these intimidating buzzwords, these gatekeeping phrases, and translate them into a practical, usable toolkit for you.
Because the truth is, mastering the language of money isn't just some academic exercise. It is a protective measure that can literally save you thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars over your lifetime.
And that's really the core issue at play here. I mean, the actual math of finance is universal.
Addition, subtraction.
Right, compounding percentages. Those mechanical concepts exist everywhere in the world. But the specific English terminology used in the U.S. system, it often acts as a gatekeeper.
If you don't know the password, you don't get through the gate.
Exactly. So what we are doing today is giving you those passwords. We're exploring how a lack of fluency in this specific language leaves you completely vulnerable, and how gaining that fluency is the absolute first step toward true autonomy.
Okay, let's unpack this, because before you can grow your wealth or invest or buy real estate, you absolutely have to know where your money is currently going.
You need to understand the daily mechanics of your cash flow.
Right. So our material today starts by defining the spectrum of financial reality that people live in. On one end, you have this incredibly common phrase living paycheck to paycheck.
Which means you are spending every single dollar you earn each month.
With absolutely nothing left over for savings. You are functionally at zero every 30 days.
Yeah. And on the other end of the spectrum is the ultimate goal, which is living below your means, spending less than you earned.
But getting from that constant state of zero to actually having a surplus, it requires identifying something the material calls the money leak.
The money leak. It's a brilliant piece of imagery, really, because it perfectly describes the mechanics of the problem.
It's such a visceral term.
It is, because a money leak is rarely a massive, catastrophic purchase. It isn't buying a luxury car you can't afford.
Right. It's a small, unnoticed, recurring expense. It makes me think of a slow puncture in a car tire. You're driving along, the car feels mostly fine, maybe a little sluggish.
But you don't really notice anything is fundamentally wrong until you are completely stranded on the side of the highway with a flat.
Exactly. The example used in the sources is having like 5 or 6 different streaming subscriptions, but only ever really watching 1 or 2 of them.
It's $5 here, $15 there.
But if we think about how modern businesses operate, those leaks are intentional, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the friction to sign up is zero, but the friction to cancel is massive. But let me ask you this. Is tracking every single expense realistically sustainable for the average person, or does it just induce anxiety?
Well, what's fascinating here is the psychology behind that exact resistance. Budgeting has a terrible reputation in our culture.
People hate the word.
They do. They view it as a form of self-punishment or extreme restriction. But if we look at the mechanics of it, tracking your expenses is simply an information-gathering exercise.
Okay.
I mean, you cannot fix a leak if you don't know where the pipes are routed. The anxiety people feel actually stems from the unknown, from living paycheck to paycheck and standing at the grocery store checkout, just hoping there's enough in the account when you swipe your card.
Oh man, you're sweating while the machine says processing. We've all been there.
Exactly. By gaining a clear mathematical picture of your spending, You aren't saying, I can never spend money again. You are simply giving yourself the data required to deliberately cut back on the unnecessary things.
You are consciously plugging the leak so that the water can flow where you actually want it to go.
Right. It's about shifting from passive spending to intentional allocation.
And that intentionality is what allows you to build the next crucial piece of the foundation, which the text calls the safety net, more specifically, the emergency fund.
Which is vital.
The golden rule laid out here is saving 3 to 6 months worth of living expenses. Notice that's living expenses, not income.
Right. The bare minimum you need to keep the lights on, keep a roof over your head, and buy groceries.
And why is that safety net non-negotiable?
Because life is inherently unpredictable. If you don't have a cash buffer, any minor emergency instantly transitions from an inconvenience to a financial disaster.
Think about that visceral example they give in the material setting, aside cash for a car repair. Let's say it's a Tuesday morning, you're driving to work and your transmission blows.
A terrible morning.
Right. If you have that safety net, you are annoyed. You use the cash, you fix the car, your life goes on.
But if you are living paycheck to paycheck and you don't have that cash,
what happens? You are immediately forced to put a $2,000 repair on a credit card. Now you are paying for the repair plus 20% interest.
And worse, what if your credit limit is maxed out?
Now you can't fix the car. If you can't fix the car, you can't get to work. If you can't get to work, you lose your job. Now you have no income, a broken car, and rent is due. It derails your entire financial life.
Precisely. The safety net stops the domino effect. It breaks the chain of causality between a bad day and a ruined decade.
Wow.
Because without it, you end up borrowing money just to survive Tuesday, which heavily penalizes your Wednesday.
Which bridges us perfectly into the dark side of that exact scenario. Because once you understand your daily cash flow and you've built that safety net, you have to confront the ghosts of past spending. We have to talk about debt and how managing debt directly dictates your financial report card in the US. The phrase used here is the vicious cycle, and it almost exclusively revolves around credit cards.
Credit cards represent arguably the most perilous aspect of the American financial system for the uninitiated.
Let's decode the terminology here.
Okay, so credit cards are unsecured loans. And because there is no physical asset like a house or a car for the bank to take back if you don't pay, they charge exceptionally high interest rates to mitigate their risk.
We are talking 20%, 25%, sometimes nearly 30% interest.
And the danger lies in what the industry calls carrying a balance.
Let's really break that down for someone who might be carrying a balance right now.
Sure. Carrying a balance means you don't pay off the full amount you borrowed at the end of the billing cycle. You leave unpaid debt on the card.
And this is where the math turns ruthless. Because the interest compounds, you end up paying interest on the interest you already owe.
Exactly.
So if you owe $5,000 and you're only paying the minimum payment the credit card company asks for each month, a massive chunk of that payment is just covering the interest generated that month.
You are barely touching the actual $5,000 you spent.
It is a financial black hole.
It really is. The more you owe, the more interest generates, which makes it harder to pay off, which means you owe even more the next month. This is the vicious cycle.
So how do we escape? Our material outlines 2 primary methods for breaking out of this trap: the debt avalanche method and the debt snowball method.
And they operate on very different underlying mechanics.
Let's start with the avalanche, because mathematically, this is the one that makes absolute sense. With the debt avalanche, you list out all your debts, and you ruthlessly attack the one with the highest interest rate first, while paying the minimums on everything else.
Right.
So if you have a credit card at 24%, a car loan at 6%, and a student loan at 4%, you throw every spare dollar at that 24% credit card.
Mathematically, this guarantees you will pay the least amount of money to the banks over time. You are stopping the most expensive bleeding first.
Okay, but the alternative, the debt snowball method, it ignores interest rates entirely.
It does. You list your debts from the smallest total dollar amount to the largest. And you pay off the smallest debt first, regardless of whether it's a 4% loan or a 24% card.
Wait, mathematically, that makes 0 sense. If the avalanche method literally saves me more money, which is the entire point of personal finance, keeping your own money, why would I intentionally choose a strategy that costs me more in interest?
It's a great question.
I mean, trying to pay off massive debt by ignoring the high-interest cards feels like trying to empty a swimming pool with a teaspoon while someone else has the hose turned on full blast. Why would anyone do the snowball method?
Well, what's fascinating here is if we connect this to the bigger picture of human behavior, it makes profound sense.
Okay, I'm listening.
Math is logical, yes, but debt is deeply emotional. It carries shame, it carries exhaustion. The reason people get stuck in the vicious cycle isn't usually because they can't do the math. It's because they lose hope.
Debt fatigue.
Exactly. They suffer from debt fatigue. The debt snowball method is rooted entirely in behavioral science.
Okay, walk me through the psychology of that.
Imagine you have a $500 medical bill, a $3,000 credit card, and a $15,000 car loan.
Got it.
If you use the avalanche method and attack the credit card first because of the interest rate, it might take you a year to pay it off. For 12 months, you are grinding away, making payments, but you still have 3 distinct debts hanging over your head. You don't feel any different.
You're just exhausted.
Right. But with the snowball method, you attack that $500 medical bill. You might clear that out in 2 months. Suddenly, you cross a debt off your list completely. It is gone forever.
Oh, I see.
You get a massive psychological dopamine hit. It is a tangible victory.
Ah, so you're buying momentum.
Exactly. Those small immediate wins provide the motivation and momentum required to stay the course for the years it might take to pay off the larger debts.
That makes total sense.
You might pay a few $100s more in interest overall, but you significantly increase the mathematical probability that you will actually finish the journey. You have to break the cycle psychologically before you can break it mathematically.
That is fascinating. You are essentially tricking your own brain into staying disciplined.
You are.
And you desperately need that discipline because getting out of debt is essential for mastering the next core concept, the U.S. credit score.
Which is huge.
If you are operating in the United States, your credit score is basically your financial DNA. It is a shadow metric that follows you everywhere.
It is the ultimate algorithm of trust in the U.S. system. It is a 3-digit number ranging from 300 to 850, representing how trustworthy you are as a borrower.
And anything above 740 is generally considered excellent, right?
Yes, and we need to emphasize the sheer scale of what this number controls. It doesn't just dictate whether a bank will give you a credit card.
It's way more than that.
It dictates your ability to get a mortgage to buy a house. It dictates whether a landlord will approve you to rent an apartment. It determines the interest rate you will be offered on a car loan, which dictates your monthly payment.
Oh, wow.
In many states, auto insurance companies use it to set your premiums. And increasingly, employers will check your credit history before offering you a job.
Viewing it as a proxy for your general responsibility, it's everywhere. You cannot escape it.
You can't.
And our sources highlight a massive term within this scoring system that trips so many people up: credit utilization.
Yes, this is key.
We know paying your bills on time is important, obviously, but credit utilization is arguably the most misunderstood factor in calculating that 3-digit score.
Absolutely. Credit utilization is simply how much of your available credit you are actually using at any given moment.
And the absolute magic rule laid out here is keeping it below 30%.
Let's explore exactly how the algorithm views this. Let's say you have a single credit card, and the bank has given you a $10,000 limit. The experts strongly recommend never letting the balance on that card exceed $3,000 at any point during the month.
Yeah.
Even if you are wildly wealthy and you plan to pay it off in full on the 30th.
Which seems totally counterintuitive. If the bank gave me $10,000 and I can pay back $10,000, why does the algorithm punish me for using it?
Because the algorithm is designed to detect risk, not wealth.
Oh.
From the algorithm's perspective, if you are suddenly maxing out your available credit lines, using 90 or 100% of what is available to you, you appear desperate for cash.
You look like you're panicking.
It assumes you have suffered an income shock, or you are over-leveraged. You look like a high-risk borrower on the verge of defaulting.
Interesting.
By keeping your utilization exceptionally low, below 30%, you are signaling to the algorithm that you have access to credit, but you have the financial stability and discipline not to rely on it.
It's almost like a test. They give you the rope, but they punish you if you actually pull on it. And because this 3-digit number holds so much staggering power over your life, you have to defend it aggressively. Which brings us to a major modern vulnerability: the threat of identity theft.
A very real threat.
If someone gets your social security number and opens 3 credit cards in your name, they can destroy a decade of good credit in a weekend. The defensive move our sources hammer home is freezing your credit.
This is perhaps the single most effective proactive measure you can take. In the U.S., the credit system relies on three major bureaus: Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion.
The massive data brokers keeping your file.
Right. By actively contacting them, usually just through their websites, and freezing your credit, you are essentially putting a padlock on your financial file.
What does that practically do if a scammer tries to open an account?
Well, if a scammer applies for a loan in your name, the bank will automatically send a request to Equifax or Experian to check your credit score.
Right.
But because your file is frozen, the bureau denies the request. The bank cannot see your score, so the bank automatically denies the loan application.
Wow. So the scam is stopped cold.
Stopped cold. No one, not even you, can open a new account until you log back in and temporarily lift the freeze. It is the strongest, most impenetrable shield you have against identity theft.
So let's recap. We've built the foundation. You're tracking your expenses, plugging the money leaks. You have a 3 to 6 month emergency fund acting as a shock absorber.
Yes.
You're deploying the snowball or avalanche method to crush your high interest debt, and your credit file is frozen and secure. You have essentially perfected your financial defense.
But nobody gets wealthy just playing defense.
Right. Now, how do you actually put your money to work? Here's where it gets really interesting. We are transitioning to the engine of wealth investing and the snowball effect.
The transition from saving to investing is the transition from static money to dynamic money.
Okay, what does that mean?
When money sits in a checking account, it is static. In fact, due to inflation, it is actively losing purchasing power every single day.
It's going backwards.
Exactly. Investing is the process of putting your money into assets that generate more money. But again, the jargon here acts as a massive, intimidating barrier.
People hear words like stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, dividends, capital gains, and they freeze. They assume you need a degree in finance to participate.
It sounds like a completely foreign language.
It does. But when you strip away the jargon, the underlying concepts are surprisingly straightforward. Take the word stock. When you buy a stock, you are literally buying a microscopic piece of a real physical company.
Yes.
If you buy stock in Apple, you own a tiny sliver of their factories, their intellectual property, their supply chain, and their profits.
And our sources break down the two ways you actually make money from owning that sliver.
Right. The first is a capital gain. The company designs a great new phone, they sell millions of them, the company becomes more valuable, so the value of your sliver goes up.
And you eventually sell your sliver to someone else for more than you paid for it. That profit is your capital gain.
And the second method?
That's through dividends. This is the purest form of passive income.
We love passive income.
We do. A company has a highly profitable year, and the board of directors decides they don't need to reinvest all that cash back into the business.
So what do they do with it?
They take a portion of those profits and distribute it directly to the shareholders as regular cash payments, often quarterly.
So if you own the stock, you simply wake up one morning with more cash in your account. You didn't trade your time or labor for it. Your capital was out in the economy working on your behalf.
Exactly. However, the source material explicitly notes a massive red flag here.
Uh-oh.
For the average person, picking and buying individual stocks, trying to guess which specific company is going to succeed, is incredibly risky.
Why is that?
If you put all your money into one company, and that company makes a terrible product or gets outcompeted, your investment can literally go to zero.
Oh man, think about the people who heavily invested in Blockbuster Video right before Netflix came along.
Exactly. You are tying your entire financial future to the competence of one single CEO and the fate of one single business model.
Which is why financial advisors almost universally point retail investors toward ETFs, exchange-traded funds, and index funds.
Yes.
And the undisputed heavyweight champion mentioned in our sources is the S&P 500. Let's really explain the S&P 500 because it is the holy grail of this strategy.
It really is.
The S&P 500 is an index that tracks the 500 largest publicly traded companies in the United States. Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, all the giants.
So when you buy an S&P 500 index fund, you are not buying one company. With a single purchase, you are buying a tiny, microscopic slice of all 500 of the biggest companies at the exact same time.
And we have to explain the inherent brilliance of an index fund. It is a self-cleansing mechanism.
What do you mean by that?
Well, if one of those 500 companies starts failing, say a massive tech company suddenly goes bankrupt, their stock price drops.
Right.
Because the S&P 500 is weighted by size, that failing company automatically falls out of the top 500.
And the next rising successful company takes its place in the index.
Exactly. You don't have to monitor the news. You don't have to read financial reports. The index automatically drops the losers and acquires the winners.
That's powerful. By investing in the S&P 500, you're essentially betting on the continued growth and innovation of the broader American economy as a whole.
And historically, despite wars, recessions, and pandemics, this index has returned an average of about 10% per year over long periods.
But there is the caveat over long periods, because in the short term, the stock market is a roller coaster.
It swings up and down wildly based on political news, inflation reports, global supply chain issues.
Right.
And this brings up something I really want to explore. If the S&P 500 averages a 10% return over decades, and it's this mathematically proven path to wealth, why does the volatility of the market terrify so many people?
It's a great question.
Why do intelligent people panic and pull their retirement money out the second the market dips?
Well, this raises an important question about human evolution versus modern financial systems.
Okay, biology.
We are biologically, evolutionarily wired to react to immediate physical threats. For hundreds of thousands of years, if a predator jumped out of the bushes, your brain flooded with cortisol and you ran.
You survived by taking immediate evasive action?
Yes. Today, we don't have lions jumping out of bushes. But when a person logs into their retirement account and sees that their life savings has dropped by 15% in a single week because of a global market correction,
their primitive brain interprets that dropping number as a mortal predator. The cortisol hits exactly the same way.
Exactly. The biological response is to take immediate evasive action to stop the bleeding. They panic, and they sell their investments while the prices are low.
Converting those temporary paper losses into permanent locked-in cash losses.
Which is the absolute worst thing you can do. You have to actively fight your own evolutionary biology. You have to separate short-term emotional panic from long-term rational strategy.
And as the text explicitly states, the golden rule of investing is time in the market beats timing the market.
It's a fundamental truth.
Time in the market beats timing the market. I love that phrase. It means just stay seated on the roller coaster, don't try to jump off when it's dipping, and guess exactly when it's going back up.
Right, because the reward for fighting that panic is what Albert Einstein supposedly called the eighth wonder of the world.
Compound interest.
Yes. Our sources call it the snowball effect. And the mechanics of this are mind-blowing if you've never mapped them out.
The mechanism of compounding is exponential growth, not linear growth. Linear growth is adding, compounding is multiplying.
Imagine a snowball rolling down a very long, snow-covered hill.
Okay.
When you first pack it together at the top, it's small. As it rolls, it picks up a thin layer of snow. That's your first year of interest.
Makes sense.
But here's the secret. As the snowball gets slightly bigger, its surface area expands. In the second year, it isn't just the original snowball picking up snow, it's the new, larger surface area picking up more snow at a faster rate.
And by the time it is rolling down the bottom half of the hill, it is massive, gathering huge amounts of snow with every single rotation. By the bottom, it's an avalanche.
Let's put concrete numbers to that analogy to show why time is the most valuable asset you have.
Hit me.
If you invest a relatively small amount of money in your 20s, say $10,000, and you never add another dime, it has 40 years to compound before you retire.
Okay.
At a 2% return, it will double roughly every 7 years. 10,000 becomes 20,000, then 40,000, then 80,000, 160,000, 320,000.
Oh.
Now, imagine someone waits until they are in their 40s to invest that exact same $10,000. It only has 20 years to compound. It might double twice, reaching 40,000.
The person who started early didn't invest more money. They simply bought more time for the snowball to roll.
Exactly.
That is staggering. The exact same starting amount, but an almost $300,000 difference just because of time.
It's the math of time.
Okay, so you've set up your investments, you're fighting the panic, the snowball is rolling down the hill and getting massive. But as your wealth grows, you encounter a new obstacle.
Yes, you do.
Because there is an entity standing at the bottom of that hill with a shovel, waiting to take a massive scoop out of your snowball, the United States government.
The Uncle Sam factor.
Exactly. Knowing what to invest in, like the S&P 500, is only half the battle. Knowing where to physically put those investments to shield them from taxes is the other half.
We have to navigate the complex world of retirement accounts and the U.S. tax system.
Let's start with the big one, the one most tied to American employment, the 401k.
So the U.S. tax code is essentially a massive list of incentives. The government wants you to save for your own retirement so that you aren't reliant on the state when you are elderly.
Right.
To incentivize this, they offer what we call tax-advantaged accounts. The most prominent of these is the 401k, which is a retirement vehicle offered through your employer.
And the primary mechanical advantage of a traditional 401k is that your contributions are made pre-tax. Let's translate pre-tax into plain English because it is a powerful tool.
Sure.
If your salary is $5,000 a month and you put $500 of that into your 401k investment account, the IRS essentially pretends that you only earned $4,500 that month.
They do not tax that $500 right now. It directly reduces your taxable income for the current year.
But the real magic, the absolute superpower of the 401k, is the employer match. Many companies will match what you put in up to a certain percentage of your salary.
And this is where we encounter one of the most vital idioms in the material, leaving money on the table.
Oh, I hate leaving money on the table.
An employer match is literally free money. It is not a perk. It is part of your total compensation package.
If your company offers a 5% match and you choose not to contribute that 5% to your 401k, you are actively refusing a part of your own salary. You are telling your boss, no thanks, keep it.
Exactly. Taking full advantage of the match is the most critical first step in any investing journey because it guarantees an immediate, risk-free, 100% return on your investment.
If you put in $1,000, they put in $1,000. There is no investment on earth that guarantees a 100% instant return other than an employer match.
Never leave free money on the table.
Never. Now, if you don't have a 401k because you work for a small business, or if you've already gotten your match and you want to invest even more, our sources outline the next vehicle IRAs, individual retirement accounts.
These are accounts you open up yourself, completely independent of your boss.
And there is a massive fork in the road here that confuses almost everyone. The traditional IRA versus the Roth IRA.
The decision between a traditional and a Roth structure comes down to a fundamental question of tax strategy. Do you want to pay taxes to the government today, or do you want to pay taxes to the government decades from now?
Walk us through the mechanics of both.
A traditional IRA operates much like the 401k we just discussed. Your contributions are tax deductible today.
Okay.
If you put $6,000 in, you lower your current taxable income by $6,000, saving you money on taxes this year, but the government always gets its cut eventually.
Right. When you are 65 and you start withdrawing that money to live on, you pay income taxes on everything, the original contributions, and all the decades of compound growth.
Yes. And the Roth IRA is the exact reverse mechanism. With a Roth, there is no tax deduction today.
You pay taxes on your income right now at your current tax rate, and you put that after-tax money into the Roth IRA.
It hurts a little more today. But then the snowball rolls down the hill for 30 years. It grows into a massive sum.
And when you pull it out in retirement, every single penny is 100% tax-free. The government cannot touch the growth.
This is why the Roth IRA is generally considered the vastly superior vehicle for younger people, or anyone who expects their income, and therefore their tax bracket, to be higher in the future.
If you are 25 and in a low tax bracket, you are locking in today's cheap tax rate to permanently shield tomorrow's massive compounded gains from ever being taxed.
It is a phenomenal wealth-building tool.
Which naturally brings us to the beast itself, the broader U.S. tax system. Every year, by April 15th, every working American has to square up with the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service.
And the vocabulary on the tax forms trips up almost everyone.
Specifically, the difference between deductions and credits. These sound like synonyms. They sound like they do the exact same thing, but mathematically, they operate on completely different levels of the equation.
They are drastically different in their actual cash value to you. Let's use specific numbers to illustrate the mechanic.
Okay, let's do it.
Imagine your total income for the year is $60,000. A deduction reduces your baseline taxable income. It shrinks the pie that the government is allowed to look at.
Right.
So if you have $10,000 in tax deductions, maybe from student loan interest or the traditional IRA contribution, the IRS calculates your taxes as if you only earn $50,000.
You still pay taxes. You are just paying a percentage on a smaller baseline number. It saves you a fraction of that $10,000.
But a credit is much, much more powerful.
How so?
A credit doesn't touch your income. It attacks your final tax bill, dollar for dollar.
Let's say after all the math, all the deductions, the IRS formula determines you owe them exactly $5,000 in taxes.
But you have a $1,000 tax credit, maybe for installing solar panels or having a child.
You literally just subtract it. 5,000 minus 1,000, now you only owe $4,000.
Exactly. A credit is a direct dollar-for-dollar discount on the final bill itself. It is essentially the government handing you a gift card to pay your tax bill.
And this leads directly into another massive widespread point of cultural confusion, the difference between a tax return and a tax refund.
These terms are used interchangeably in conversation, but they mean very different things.
Your tax return is the actual paperwork. It is the stack of forms, the 1040, the digital file you submit to the government, detailing your financial life for the year.
Right. And the tax refund is the actual check or direct deposit you might receive back from the Treasury.
And this is where I want to talk about the psychology of the American tax refund, because it is deeply culturally ingrained.
It really is.
Every spring in the U.S., there is this massive excitement around getting a big tax refund. People post about it online. Car dealerships run tax refund sales.
Yeah, people treat it like a fun yearly bonus from the government.
They use it to buy a new TV or go on vacation or finally buy that luxury item they've been eyeing. It feels like winning a mini lottery.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture of everything we've discussed so far, the money leaks, the debt cycle, compound interest treating a tax refund as a bonus is an entirely misplaced emotion.
Tell me why.
A tax refund is not free money. It is not a gift. It simply means that throughout the previous 12 months, your employer withheld too much money from your paychecks. You overpaid your taxes.
Oh, wow.
By getting a massive $3,000 refund in April, you essentially gave the federal government a $3,000 zero-interest loan for an entire year.
When you phrase it like that, you let the government hold your money for free. You could have used that money every single month to plug your own money leaks.
Exactly.
You could have used it to build your safety net faster, avoiding credit card debt. Or, most importantly, you could have been dripping that extra $250 a month into the S&P 500, letting the snowball effect work for you instead of the Treasury.
Precisely. The optimal outcome, the true mathematical goal of filing your taxes, is not a huge refund. It is to break even.
You want to owe the IRS $0 and you want a refund of $0.
That means your withholding was perfectly accurate and you kept every single dollar you earned in your own pocket exactly when you earned it.
That is a massive perspective shift. A refund isn't a bonus, it's a correction of a year-long mistake.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so let's summarize where we are. We have built wealth through our daily habits. We have fired up the engine of compounding index funds. We have sheltered that wealth from taxes using 401ks and Roth IRAs.
The fortress is built?
The fortress is built. But all of that mathematical optimization is utterly useless if a single unexpected life event drains the accounts overnight. We have to talk about the physical defense of your money.
We are moving into shielding the wealth through insurance and real estate.
These are the two most significant, structural, unavoidable expenses in American life. Let's begin with healthcare, because the terminology here is critical not just for wealth building, but for basic survival.
The text uses the word astronomical to describe healthcare costs in the U.S.
And having seen the bills, that is not hyperbole. A single hospital visit, a broken leg, and unexpected surgery without insurance can easily cost tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of dollars.
It is the #1 cause of bankruptcy in the United States. Not reckless credit card spending, not gambling on bad stocks, getting sick.
So having health insurance is absolutely non-negotiable, but the jargon is a nightmare. Let's translate the architecture of a health insurance policy.
The foundational building block is the premium. This is the fixed monthly subscription fee you pay to the insurance company just to have the policy active, regardless of whether you ever go to the doctor or not.
It is your baseline cost of entry.
Then, layered on top of that, you have the deductible. This is the amount of money you must pay entirely out of your own pocket for medical services before your insurance company steps in and starts paying for anything.
Let's use a scenario. You have an insurance policy with a $2,000 deductible. In January, you go to the hospital and the bill is $1,500.
You pay that entire $1,500 yourself. The insurance company pays $0, but they track it.
In March, you have another procedure that costs $1,000. You pay the first $500 of that bill, which finally brings your total out-of-pocket spending to your $2,000 deductible limit.
Now the deductible's met. For the remaining $500 of that bill, and for the rest of the year, the insurance company finally starts kicking in.
And we should explore why deductibles even exist. From an economic standpoint, they are designed to prevent moral hazard.
Right. If healthcare were completely free at the point of service, people might go to the emergency room for a paper cut. overwhelming the system.
The deductible forces the consumer to have skin in the game, ensuring they only seek care when necessary.
That makes economic sense, even if it hurts the wallet. Now, even after you hit that deductible, you might still have a copay.
This is a fixed, smaller fee, maybe $30 or $50, that you pay every single time you visit a specific doctor or pick up a prescription, essentially sharing the ongoing cost with the insurer.
But all of this leads up to the most important term in the entire glossary, the true shield, the out-of-pocket maximum.
What's fascinating here is that the out-of-pocket maximum is essentially your ultimate financial firewall. It is the absolute highest hard-capped amount of money you will be required to pay for covered in-network healthcare services in a single calendar year.
So if you get into a terrible accident or get a severe diagnosis,
Let's say you need an emergency surgery and a hospital stay that totals $150,000.
if your policy has an out-of-pocket maximum of $8,000, once you have paid your deductibles and copays, adding up to that $8,000 limit, you are done.
The insurance company steps in and covers 100% of the remaining $142,000.
The out-of-pocket maximum caps your absolute worst-case scenario. It allows you to know exactly how much emergency fund cash you need to guarantee you won't go bankrupt.
But I hear people complain about this all the time. You're paying these massive premiums every month, year after year, hoping you never actually get sick or have to use a policy. You feel healthy, but your bank account is draining. Is insurance just a bet against yourself?
It is entirely the opposite. It is not a bet against yourself. It is the purposeful, calculated transfer of catastrophic risk.
Okay, unpack that.
You are paying a known, manageable, predictable cost, the monthly premium, to ensure that you never have to face an unknown, unmanageable, life-destroying cost like a $500,000 oncology bill.
You are buying certainty.
And in the American system, you have to secure this certainty during open enrollment. This is a very specific, strict window of time each year, typically in the late fall, where you are legally allowed to sign up for or change your health insurance policy, often through the ACA or Obamacare marketplace.
And if you miss that window,
You are generally locked out for the entire year, fully exposed to that catastrophic risk.
and that logic of transferring risk applies directly to auto insurance as well. It's required by law to drive. It covers damage to vehicles and medical expenses from accidents.
But the massive piece of advice, our material highlights for auto insurance, is the phrase, shop around.
So many people just auto-renew with the same car insurance company for a decade out of sheer laziness.
But getting quotes from different insurers every year or two can save you hundreds of dollars because every single company uses a slightly different algorithm to assess your risk profile.
And that concept of risk assessment, algorithms, and transferring massive sums of money perfectly brings us to the other titanic pillar of American wealth and defense real estate.
For the vast majority of people, buying a home will be the single largest financial transaction they ever make in their entire lives.
Let's break down the mechanics of buying a house. Most people don't have $400,000 in cash sitting around. So you go to a bank and take out a mortgage.
A mortgage is simply a massive loan, specifically designed and legally structured to buy property. You agree to pay it back in monthly installments over a set period, almost universally 15 or 30 years in the U.S.
But the key mechanism that makes a mortgage different from a credit card is the concept of collateral. The house itself is the collateral.
You are legally pledging the physical structure as security for the loan.
If you lose your job and stop making those monthly payments, the bank invokes a terrifying process called foreclosure.
They use the legal system to evict you, seize the house, and sell it to someone else to recoup their lost money.
This severe consequence is exactly why understanding exactly how much house you can actually afford is paramount. The source material highlights a crucial industry standard metric, the 28% rule of thumb.
This guideline dictates that your total monthly housing costs should never, ever exceed 28% of your gross pre-tax monthly income.
And we must be clear about what total housing costs means. It is not just the loan payment. It includes the mortgage principal, the interest, the property taxes, the home insurance, and any HOA fees.
There is so much intense psychological and cultural pressure in the U.S. to buy a house, to achieve the American dream. People view renting as throwing money away, which is a myth we could do a whole separate deep dive on.
Absolutely. Because of that pressure, people will stretch their budgets to the absolute breaking point, completely ignoring that 28% rule just to get the keys to a house.
But if you spend 45 or 50% of your income on your mortgage, you become what's known as house poor.
Being house poor is a suffocating reality. You have a beautiful house, you have the granite countertops and the nice yard, but you are functionally broke.
You have no money left over to fund your 401k, to build an emergency fund, to take vacations, or even to fix the roof when it eventually leaks. You are entirely trapped by the physical asset you thought was going to give you freedom.
And part of avoiding that trap is understanding the structure of the mortgage loan itself. When you sign the papers, you must choose between a fixed-rate mortgage and an adjustable-rate mortgage, often called an ARM.
With a fixed-rate mortgage, your interest rate, say 5%, is legally locked in for the entire 30 years. Your monthly payment for the loan itself will never change, offering total predictability.
It is essentially a hedge against inflation. 30 years from now, you are paying the same dollar amount, but with future inflated dollars.
An adjustable rate mortgage, however, is a different beast. It might offer a slightly cheaper teaser rate for the first 3 or 5 years, but then it unlocks. It fluctuates based on the broader global economy and the Federal Reserve.
The danger of an ARM cannot be overstated. If you lock in an ARM and global inflation spikes, causing the Federal Reserve to raise interest rates, your monthly mortgage payment automatically spikes with it.
A global economic shift can literally cause someone in Ohio to suddenly owe $500 more a month, completely destroying their budget and forcing them into foreclosure.
It is terrifying.
Yeah.
Which is why fixed rate is the standard advice. But what happens if you locked in a fixed rate at 7%, and then 5 years later the global economy shifts and interest rates drop down to 4%? You're stuck paying the expensive rate.
Our sources introduced the escape hatch for this refinancing.
When you refinance, you basically go to a bank, take out a brand new mortgage at the new lower 4% rate, and use that new money to instantly pay off the old expensive 7% mortgage.
It sounds like a no-brainer to lower your monthly payment, but there is a massive catch: the friction cost.
Right. Refinancing is not free.
No. The banks charge administrative fees, appraisal fees, title searches, and legal fees, collectively known as closing costs. These can easily amount to thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars, folded into the new loan.
So you must, as the material says, do the math. You have to calculate the break-even point.
If refinancing saves you $200 a month but costs $4,000 in closing fees, it will take you 20 months just to break even on the fees.
If you plan to sell the house and move before those 20 months are up, refinancing was actually a mathematical mistake.
Doing the math. It always comes back to doing the math.
Now, beyond just living in a primary residence, the material touches on real estate investing, buying properties to rent out to other people, seeking that holy grail of passive income.
But the text is brutally honest. Landlording is often a real headache.
You are dealing with broken toilets at 2 a.m., problem tenants who won't pay, property maintenance, city codes. It is often a very active, labor-intensive second job, not passive income at all.
Which is why the alternative they present is so highly appealing for wealth builders: REITs, real estate investment trusts.
These are massive, professionally managed corporations that own and operate income-producing real estate at scale. We are talking about 50-story apartment complexes, commercial shopping malls, data centers, logistics warehouses.
And the beauty is you can buy shares of a REIT on the regular stock market, exactly like you buy shares of Apple or an S&P 500 index fund.
It allows you to get financial exposure to the entire real estate market and earn those sweet dividend payments from the rent the corporation collects without ever having to unclog a single toilet or evict a tenant yourself.
It is the ultimate hack for real estate exposure. It allows for immediate diversification and liquidity in a market that is traditionally highly illiquid.
Okay, we are rounding the final corner of this deep dive. We have built the foundation of cash flow. We navigated the emotional and mathematical traps of debt. We fired up the compounding investment engine. And we shielded the entire apparatus with insurance and real estate strategy.
We have essentially covered the entire traditional playbook.
But now we have to look at the modern landscape. Moving to our final themes here, dealing with modern traps and alternate paths. Because even if you memorize the rule book, the psychology of the modern hyperconnected world is actively trying to derail you every single day.
The most insidious psychological trap identified in our sources is lifestyle inflation, commonly referred to in personal finance circles as lifestyle creep.
It is a behavioral phenomenon where your discretionary spending increases at the exact same rate as your income increases.
It is so sneaky. I have seen this happen to so many people. You're 25, making $50,000 a year. You have roommates, you drive a beat-up car, you cook pasta at home. You're surviving.
Then you get a promotion. Now you're making $75,000. It is a massive jump.
But instead of taking that extra 25 grand and pushing it straight into your emergency fund or maxing out your 401k, your brain says, I deserve a reward.
You move into a luxury one-bedroom apartment. You finance a brand new car. You start buying $6 coffees every morning. You inflate your lifestyle to perfectly match your new paycheck.
So even though you are making 50% more money than you were a year ago, your savings rate is exactly the same, 0. You are still living paycheck to paycheck. You are just doing it at a higher, more luxurious tier.
And this behavior is deeply driven by the classic idiom our sources highlight, keeping up with the Joneses.
This is the ingrained evolutionary human desire to match the social and material status of our peers to ensure our place in the tribe.
But we must recognize that social media has hyper-weaponized this concept over the last decade. You are no longer just comparing yourself to your physical neighbors looking at their lawnmower.
You are constantly comparing your behind-the-scenes mundane reality to the highly curated, heavily filtered, algorithmically boosted highlight reels of millions of people online.
So what does this all mean for our daily lives? It means we are subjected to a relentless bombardment of perceived wealth. The exotic Instagram vacations, the designer clothes hauls on TikTok, the brand new luxury cars.
But the text gives us two incredible accounting idioms to describe the stark difference between appearance and reality being in the red versus being in the black.
These are essential terms. If an accountant says a business is in the red, it means they are operating at a loss. They are bleeding money. They are in debt. Historically, accountants actually use red ink in the ledgers to denote negative numbers.
If a business is in the black, they are profitable. They have a surplus.
The illusion of the modern internet is that the guy posing next to the new BMW on your feed looks like a millionaire. He looks incredibly successful.
But his $900 auto loan, his maxed out credit cards, and his lack of an emergency fund mean he is absolutely drowning in the red. He is one missed paycheck away from disaster.
Meanwhile, the woman driving the 10-year-old Honda Civic, wearing thrifted clothes and packing her lunch to work, might be quietly investing 40% of her income into index funds and living entirely in the black.
Appearances in personal finance are completely, utterly deceiving. Wealth is what you don't see.
The primary defense mechanism against this psychological warfare, against lifestyle creep and the Joneses, is a foundational principle called pay yourself first.
This is about automating your financial discipline so you don't have to rely on willpower. Willpower is finite. Automation is infinite.
How does that actually look in practice?
Before you pay your rent, before you buy groceries, and certainly before you have the opportunity to succumb to the temptation of lifestyle creep, you set up an automated transfer at your bank.
The day your paycheck hits your checking account, the system automatically pulls a set percentage, say 15%, and routes it directly into your savings, your IRA, or your brokerage account.
You remove the human decision-making process entirely. By the time you log in to check your balance, the money to be invested is already gone.
You have literally paid your future self before you are mathematically allowed to fund your present lifestyle.
I love that. Defending your future self from your present self.
And if you take that specific discipline to the absolute mathematical extreme, you arrive at something our sources explore called the FIRE movement. FIRE, financial independence, retire early.
The FIRE movement is a fascinating socioeconomic phenomenon that has gained massive traction. It fundamentally rejects the traditional American narrative of working a 9-to-5 job until you are 65 years old.
Instead, adherents aggressively minimize their expenses, live with extreme frugality, and save astronomical portions of their income, often 50, 60, sometimes 70% of their take-home pay.
Saving 50% of your income sounds literally impossible to most people listening right now. But they do it to reach a very specific mathematical tipping point based on something called the 4% rule.
The 4% rule originates from the Trinity study, a famous piece of financial research. It mathematically suggests that once your invested portfolio is large enough, you can safely withdraw 4% of its total value every single year to live on.
And theoretically, because the stock market averages that 10% historical growth we discussed, accounting for inflation, your portfolio will replenish itself faster than you are draining it. You will mathematically never run out of money.
Let's do the math on that. If you manage to scrape and save and invest until you have a portfolio of $1 million, 4% of 1 million is $40,000.
If you have structured your life so that you can comfortably live on $40,000 a year, you never have to work for a paycheck again. You are done. You have achieved absolute financial independence, whether you are 65 or 35.
Now, realistically, the material acknowledges that not everyone can or even wants to live with that level of extreme deprivation and frugality in their youth.
But the FIRE movement proves a vital underlying philosophical point. Money is not ultimately about acquiring physical objects or status symbols. Money is a tool, and its highest utility is being used to purchase your own time, your autonomy, and your freedom from mandatory labor.
That is a profound perspective shift, moving from buying things to buying time. Now, to get to that level of hyper-saving, or just to pay off debt faster, many people are turning to the gig economy and side hustles.
We're talking about driving for Uber, delivering for DoorDash, doing freelance graphic design, walking dogs. A side hustle is any job you do outside of your main W-2 employment to generate extra income.
It's an incredible tool to accelerate your debt snowball. But there is a massive trap hiding in the gig economy that our sources explicitly warn about: taxes.
The tax structure of a side hustle operates entirely differently than a traditional job. When you work a normal job, you are a W-2 employee. Your employer's HR department automatically calculates and deducts your federal, state, and payroll taxes from every single paycheck before you even see the money.
In the gig economy, you are legally classified as a 1099 independent contractor. You are essentially a one-person business.
Uber does not withhold a single penny of taxes for you. They send you the gross amount. Furthermore, you are hit with something called the self-employment tax.
Let's explain that, because this ruins people's springs. In a normal job, you pay a tax for Social Security and Medicare, but you only pay half of it. Your employer legally has to pay the other half. It's a shared burden.
When you are an independent contractor driving a delivery app, you are both the employee and the employer. Therefore, the IRS makes you pay both halves. You are responsible for the entire 100% of that payroll tax yourself.
And this catches millions of people completely off guard every year. They make $10,000 driving on the weekends. They think, great, 10 grand in my pocket.
They spend the money fixing their car or paying down debt. Then HR rolls around, they file their tax return, and the IRS says, you owe us $3,000 in self-employment and income taxes.
And the money is already gone. They get hit with a massive unexpected bill, driving them right back into credit card debt to pay the government.
It defeats the entire purpose of the side hustle. The rigid advice here is crucial. If you start a side hustle, the minute you get paid, immediately take 25 to 30% of every single dollar you make and put it in a totally separate bank account just for the IRS.
Do not look at it. Do not touch it. It is not your money. You are just holding it for Uncle Sam.
It is an exercise in extreme financial discipline and administrative foresight, which brings us appropriately to the final and perhaps most chaotic element of the modern financial landscape mentioned in our materials: cryptocurrency.
Oh boy, the Wild West. Bitcoin, Ethereum, Dogecoin, it is the ultimate hot topic.
Our sources define it as a digital currency operating on a blockchain. And to strip away the intense tech jargon, a blockchain is basically a decentralized public ledger.
Instead of a central bank keeping track of who has what money, a massive network of computers around the world verifies and records every transaction. People are absolutely obsessed with it, convinced it's the fast track to wealth.
And that intense, culturally driven obsession has resulted in immense market volatility. The prices of these digital assets can swing wildly up 20%, down 40% in a matter of hours, driven by a single tweet from a billionaire or a rumor on a message board.
The source material draws a very pointed, direct historical comparison to the dot-com bubble of the late 1990s.
The era when any company that put .com at the end of their name suddenly had a billion-dollar valuation right before the entire market collapsed and wiped out trillions of dollars.
Exactly. The text classifies much of the current crypto landscape as a speculative bubble. This is an economic scenario where the price of an asset skyrockets far beyond its actual intrinsic utility or value.
The price is driven almost entirely by hype, speculation, and the psychological fear of missing out, FOMO. People buy it simply because they assume someone else will pay more for it tomorrow, not because it generates dividends or has underlying cash flow like an S&P 500 company.
And history shows that speculative bubbles eventually burst. So how are we supposed to handle it? The sources give us the absolute golden rule for interacting with crypto or any highly speculative asset: only invest money you can afford to lose.
If your crypto portfolio goes to literally zero tomorrow morning, it should not affect your ability to pay your mortgage. It should not delay your retirement. It shouldn't prevent you from buying groceries.
It should be a tiny, tightly controlled fraction of what is called a diversified portfolio.
Diversification is the ultimate risk management strategy in all of finance. It is the practical, mathematical application of the famous idiom, don't put all your eggs in one basket.
You spread your wealth across different asset classes. You own domestic stocks, international stocks, government bonds, real estate REITs, and perhaps a very small 1 or 2% allocation of speculative assets like cryptocurrency.
If the crypto basket drops and shatters, your overall financial foundation remains completely intact because your other baskets are supporting you.
Don't put all your eggs in one basket. It is such a simple, old-school phrase, but it perfectly summarizes the immense weight of modern portfolio theory. And that really brings us to the summary of this entire journey.
We have covered a staggering amount of ground today, unpacking the rule book that governs our lives.
From the very foundations of tracking your cash flow and plugging money leaks to the psychological warfare required to deploy the debt snowball. We've explored the massive wealth-generating engine of compound interest and index funds.
We translated the tax code, learning the vital difference between a deduction and a credit, and reframing the tax refund.
We mapped out the protective shields of out-of-pocket maximums and the 28% housing rule to avoid becoming house poor. And we navigated the modern minefields, the illusion of lifestyle creep, the FIRE movement's philosophy of time, the gig economy tax bomb, and speculative crypto bubbles.
And interwoven through all of this are the idioms that form the true survival toolkit for the American economy. Making ends meet, saving for a rainy day.
Understanding that breaking the bank is something to fiercely avoid, but that investing in your own financial literacy is always worth every penny. What we've done today isn't just an English vocabulary lesson.
It is the deliberate decoding of a system designed to separate you from the fruits of your labor.
Exactly. Financial literacy is a skill. It's a muscle. The more you use these terms, the more you actively understand the mechanics behind them, the stronger that muscle gets. But, and this is the most important part, you have to take action.
There are endless free resources out there, but none of them work until you apply them to your own life.
And the very first step, the one actionable thing you can do today, right now, is implement that core principle. Pay yourself first. Log into your bank, set up an automatic transfer of $50 from checking to savings for the day you get paid. Defend your future self before you fund your present self.
This raises an important question, though, and it's something I want to leave everyone lingering on today. If our economic system requires such an extensive, highly specialized, and often deeply counterintuitive vocabulary just to survive within it without going bankrupt.
Is the language itself acting as an intentional barrier to entry?
Exactly. And perhaps more importantly, as you begin to master this language, as you transition from living in the red to securely living in the black, how does your actual relationship with your own worth, your own value, and your own limited time on this earth begin to fundamentally change?
That is the real question. When you finally understand the rules, you realize the board game isn't just about accumulating the most plastic pieces. It's about buying the freedom to stand up and walk away from the table whenever you want. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep asking questions, keep decoding the jargon, and as always, stay curious and stay informed.